smartly. That's all I can say.
Well, we will enjoy the background music then in that case. Do you charge extra for this?
Well, the Royal Conservatory is doing their exams virtually this year. It's quite something. I guess you know that, Steph. Yeah. So, okay. Now I'm keen to get going. Who are we waiting for?
Yvonne.
Yvonne.
She emailed me asking for the link. So.
And also, you know, our colleague from Hollyhock.
Sorry.
You know.
You're talking to me?
Yeah. Who
Sorry, I was doing something else. Who's our colleague from Hollyhock?
Penny.
Hello.
There she is.
Oh, there she is. And yes.
Tim, are you attending as a member of the public? Great. Colleen's here too. What we've proposed is that if you want to attend without video, that might be okay. But before you go, just to keep us focused on each other for this discussion, I just wanted to clarify that the award recommendation document that was up on the website, did you see that? Happen to see that? Okay, it's very much a working document. It just nothing has been settled yet, and I fear that the 2020 recommendation column suggested otherwise. So, yeah, hang tight. Okay.
Hi, I'm just on a meeting.
The paper. Just big, right?
Just a sec.
Where are you, Penny? On island?
Yes, I'm on island. I'm always on island.
Well, if you're not on this island, you're on another. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I've yet to make my way up to the other island.
So just a quick clarifying question as a newcomer to this process. These meetings in normal times would normally be in person and open to the public?
Yes, but without an opportunity to speak. Yeah, we're not in a position to ask clarifying questions or hear comments from the grant recipients. Yeah, is that right,
We
Steph?
can do like public comments during the public comment section, not discussion during the discussion.
Sorry.
No, yeah, just to.
Well, we are, I'm wondering about when we should start. Do we know that Yvonne is coming?
She confirmed with you, Steph, right? She asked you for the link.
Okay.
Mute, Steph. Steph, mute.
We can't hear you, Steph.
All right, it wants to start a new meeting to let her in. You guys went through the link in the calendar invite, correct?
Yes.
Yes, so that's the link I'm sending her. And I don't know why it wants me.
I went through the link in the summary message that you sent yesterday, Steph. They had links to a draft agenda minutes and notes and things like that. It was a bunch of text and you said, and join the meeting here, and you linked to Zoom. And so if you resent her that message, that should work.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Steph, will I give her a call and talk her through?
Sure. So I just resent that email. We all went into that link on the email, right? Or in the calendar?
I'm going to propose that we maybe get going, if that's
Okay.
okay. So welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of the meeting of the Community Grants Advisory Committee meeting. We met last Friday, didn't give ourselves enough time. And so now here's our second time together. I was hoping to start the meeting with a brief discussion. One of the things we seem to stumble over in our discussion last week was the question of where our consideration and preference for COVID-related projects should be in our thinking, if you like. We seem to be mixing those up a little bit, and I just wanted to start by suggesting an approach, and I'm open to others' views. We have set criteria for each of these applications that they're measured against, and that each of them has spoken to. Some applications have also mentioned particular COVID factors, and that's great. But what I'm going to suggest is that we consider each application on its merits in the traditional sense, and then at the end, and then afterwards, when it comes to allocating funds, we can perhaps take a COVID look at that. So it may be that a particular project is a perfectly terrific project, but that this might not be, they might not get as much, or because it's not meeting an immediate COVID need, or we might give someone more than otherwise because it's meeting a COVID need. I don't know. When we decided to add the COVID element preference, we hadn't really thought that through, to be honest. And I'm just wondering if other committee members have thoughts on that. In other words, using COVID as a way to allocate funds, as opposed to consider the merits of an application itself.
Yeah, I think that the disconnect came between the criteria that were handed out with these and our discussion about COVID response. And I'm not sure if that happened, if the criteria should have been shared with the nonprofits, if that was how they were going to be evaluated.
I believe the criteria are shared with the
Yeah, I mean,
nonprofits.
if we were going to add COVID as a criteria, it should have been shared at the beginning.
Well, it was. On the announcement, it said preference or priority will be given to projects addressing COVID-related needs in the community. So that's not a gotcha from us. It actually was a public statement as part of the documentation.
But I'm going to suggest that we leave that factor, that special factor this year, to actually just to our allocation of funds discussion. When we get to, how would that be? Okay. So just just let's remind ourselves that we've quickly been through we've been through the 3 applications so far: Island Pacific, Bowen in Transition, and Light Up Bowen. And I wonder if we might not just quickly come back to those 3 with this new perspective, that we're really thinking about them on their merits and forget about COVID for the moment. How meritorious do you find them against the criteria? And how would you like to fund them if if COVID ranking was no object. I hope I'm not being too rambly there. So let's start with Island Pacific School.
I'm so sorry, Andrea. We need to do adoption of minutes and agenda.
I first adoption of the minutes and the agenda.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry. It's
You
my,
rock, Yvonne.
Who's Michelle? Second it, baby. Second
Thank
all
you.
that. There we go.
Sorry, you guys. I was thinking, this was the ... to be continued. So forgive me. Robert's
I
rules are
wish.
going to be the death of me.
Mhm.
There you go. You got your first and second for both of those things.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so Island Pacific School, we discussed a little bit, but I think, again, this was an example where we got a bit tangled up in COVID, if you like. So
I think, though, what I totally support your suggestion that what we want to do is look at the merits of each application and then look at the funding levels at the end, keeping the COVID filter on at that point. I feel like we haven't taken anybody out of the running yet. And so basically what we need to do is have those discussions about the funding levels that will happen at the end. And unless you're suggesting that we might want to take people out of the running at this point, because of the removal of the COVID frame.
against the criteria, I mean, I guess this is what I'm open for discussion on, is it seems to me that every application has to meet our criteria and, be well represented against our criteria. And if it's COVID related, that might boost their, I mean, they have to meet our criteria to get in the door, right?
They had to begin with, absolutely, regardless of the COVID.
Right.
So I guess my point is that I assumed that our discussion last week was taking into consideration that they had to meet the criteria. Yeah. And so what we're doing now is just rehashing everything from the beginning. If we do that, we're going to run out of time again.
Okay. So we've
So are you
decided that,
asking, Andrea, that really if we would change our position on the three groups that we spoke to, without necessarily, we didn't necessarily speak to an allotment of money, but if we would change our position based on COVID or not, I'm getting a sense that people wouldn't. So that would allow us to continue with the other applicants until we get to the end to say, what's the percentage? Because if I remember correctly, am I saying your name is Oifi? Ava, I'm sorry. I'm not Ava? Okay. Ava was really great based on what we had sent in with our little evaluations. She was also able to show us what percentage of what, based on our evaluation, could in theory be delegated to people once we got to that place to say, oh, okay, yes or no. That we did get that last time, right? That little sheet thingamajiggy you brought up on the screen. I'm not mental.
And that's unfortunately what's just created some confusion, because that was meant to be a working, and it was just kind of a working process.
Yeah, it was but it was great because it showed people where everybody lined up with their evaluation, and then it gave a little suggestive, a percentage of money based on what they had asked for that could go to that. So that's also a really great starting point when we get to a place of talking about what would we allot to.
Well, I guess what I'm not so sure about, and is after all that discussion last week, it wasn't clear to me that we had decided much about those three applications, I'll be honest, except that they seem to need money. I mean, they are the three that we discussed received the lowest scores in terms of meeting the criteria. And I'm just wondering what that means here. I mean, traditionally, we've sort of looked at the lowest ranking grants to consider, their merits. So help me, I guess I'm not a little confused about where we ended up on each of those. Yeah, Steph?
So just the way I ordered it on the agenda was there were 3 discussions last meeting and just preliminary. And then there were 4 that haven't been touched upon. So I envisioned that those 4 being touched upon, you've done the 7, then you go back and give amounts
Okey doke.
Or not.
or not.
Yeah, I think that's how we've done it in the past, like going through
Yeah.
each of them, we all have the opportunity to share our ideas around them. We listen to each other. And then at the end of the day, we look at
Yeah.
how we'd like to allocate
Okay.
the funds. And
Sorry
the
for
compensation
creating any
factor.
confusion there. So the next one to consider, if we're going up from the bottom, is the Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing Society, which received an overall score of 31. Did anyone want to speak to that?
I would, if I may.
Yeah,
I think there's many ways that council will help BIRCH outside of this group. And I think they will, I am sure, will do all possible. And I'm just thinking with the funds we have available, that in no way to say BIRCH isn't totally worthy. I just think there are other methods, other vehicles that council can employ to support BIRCH. And I would, for this purpose and this purpose only, take them off the list. That would be my personal choice.
Michelle?
Just a clarifying question for Michael on that. Thank you. That's a really useful perspective. The one thing that I noted flagged in their application was that they said this is for a modest amount of operational costs because we just can't get operational costs from other sources. And so I just want to confirm when you're saying that in fact, whatever the municipality may be able to do will in fact be able to address their need for operational costs.
You know, I better be a little careful how I answer that one, because I'm going to say, because it's absolutely truthful, the specific reference to operating costs, I know that it's our intention to support BIRCH.
Yeah.
And I would be just disingenuous if I said absolutely in that direction, because I can't confirm that. And that's the only way I can answer your question, because that's the only way I know how to.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry I can't be more specific, by the way. I hate answering like that, but you know, if you can't confirm, then you're just going to have to not confirm. So apologies.
Anyone else have comments on this application?
I'd just like to point out that they were included in the summary of grants made last year. It wasn't actually granted by this group. Those were the $25,000 that they received was outside of the community grants.
That's a good note, and I appreciate that, because one of the things I had noted down is I wish they had submitted a financial report based on last year's having received a grant. So the fact that they didn't receive a grant technically under this particular hat removes that concern.
Anybody else? Yvonne?
I'm on the Michelle train.
So remove them from the list in anticipation of support from the Muni.
No, Michelle Johnson train.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, good.
What I'll do now is I'll say I'm on the MJ train or I'm on the MK train.
Okay.
Sorry, I've only got notes from Michelle as questions. She's asking a question regarding operational costs. Michelle, did I miss something?
No, you didn't. Actually, I was mostly asking a question to clarify the operational costs. I'm not sure I feel definitive yet on how to respond to that, actually, as much as I appreciate your support, Yvonne. I feel like if the municipality is likely able to fund BIRCH, and if last year, if the $25,000 that were funded to BIRCH included operating costs, and that seems to be a precedent for this year, then I would probably say we could take BIRCH off the table, but if we're pretty sure that there's no other way they can pay those in $7,000 worth of basic salaries and admin, then I think it's worth keeping them on. So it's a tough call for this very moment without more information on that.
But that's a problem if we don't know what you know.
If I'm reading the application right, in paragraph 9, they're talking about looking for support from BIM on an ongoing basis. Does that mean looking for core funding from this fund moving forward? Or does it mean something else? I don't know.
It shouldn't. In theory, it shouldn't. They shouldn't be looking for that. We would be core funding moving forward.
Okay.
That would be the Muni, not us. Unless the Muni would think that that would be our role, also that there'd be some organizations that, and if that's the case, then you could, there's a whole bunch that you could throw in that map, right? The Caring Circle could be in that map. The Family Place could be in that map. I mean, it's
Children's Center for every project. Yeah.
Yeah. Like all of these people, it's the same, for the most part, it's the same players every year that are requesting. So it's I don't know, it's counter to what it is that I'm under the impression this group has been devised to consider. So
Okay. Should we move on to the next one? The Health Center Foundation. Have I got that right, Steph?
Sorry. Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm
Correct.
trying to avoid flipping between screens.
Yeah,
Okay. So the Health Center Foundation's application for $15,000. Okay, and I know Sherry's listening here. Any comments from the group? Michelle?
I just have another clarifying question. There was a note in this one suggesting that the Health Center Foundation has applied for, I think, federal funds for as an alternative source of funding for this, and they noted that if they were to receive them, they would if they were funded from us and they were to receive the federal funds, then they would return the funds to the municipality. And I wondered if that were the case, is there a mechanism to use them at that point? Is there a way, could they be repurposed, or is that just all over at that point?
We didn't get that investment readiness program grant from the government.
Okay.
So I actually thought that this application was right in line with what we should be funding. It was project-based. So it wasn't, ongoing operational costs. They've got some great partners. They've done some great funding, and this would just boost that one piece of work.
I'm just going to jump in and agree with you. I scored this application 35 out of 35. It yeah, for all the reasons you talked about, and the operating and governance model is a terrific approach to the ongoing project.
I'd like to second that if I can. It's a pivotal time right now for this wonderful organization. They've come a long, long way, and hopefully when it comes to next year this time, this won't be on the agenda because it won't need to be. But if you look at all the criteria, it has to, I would have thought, score well or really highly on most people's scorecards. So I would definitely speak well of it, and also the timing. because timing, as in all these things, are critical, and it couldn't be more important to them than they are.
Yvonne?
I'm trying not to talk much because I talked lots last time. I'm in agreement.
Okay. That's a strong application.
Thank you.
Bowen Island Family Place.
I have Caring Circle next, but doesn't matter.
Okay, Caring Circle. Sorry, everyone.
Sorry.
So the Caring Circle application is also for 15,000. Colleen O'Neill is in the wings, as we know. And it's the request is for contract costs for the program director, which is a similar application to ones received in the past. And again, I scored this very highly, 34 out of 35. Yep.
I also, oh, sorry, sorry, Michael. I also scored it highly. I think it was reading through their report or their application, it was really responsive to what's going on in the community. And that while this goes to help fund the coordinator, executive director, I'm not sure.
Program director.
Program director, thank you. It's having someone who's able to respond to the needs and work within, partner with other nonprofits is fabulous. My only question was, my understanding is that we're encouraging people, or what wasn't part of it was a response to how the funds were spent last year. And maybe, I don't think I missed that, but it'd be nice to see a report. And I'd just like to encourage all of the grantees to submit a report so that we have that information for future years.
Mm-hmm. If I may, I think this is one of this organization actually, while it's in front of us this time, to me, this almost comes under the same as Tourism Bowen. This is almost a fee for service. I'm firmly of the opinion, having watched over the last many years, that it's conducting an almost indispensable service. And I'm sure no one would not speak so very highly of this. It was a well-completed response to our paperwork. I scored it extremely highly, and I think it's hard to overestimate the amount of support it gives the community. And as for the other issue, the COVID issue, anything to do at the moment with health-related or medical, without definition, needs to be way up there as well. So I rated this application extremely highly, and can only say thank you to the people who operate this invaluable service. It's a real credit to our island.
I also rated the application highly, as I did a number of the ones that we're speaking up, because we're coming to the top end of the folks that have applied. My only, I guess the piece for me is that we only have, I think it's $41,400, and with all the different requests, and some of these requests are some of the ones that we're scoring at the highest range. It's I think it's over 70. So, you know, for me, it's a question of how do we, when we get to the place of determining who gets what, you know, either way we look at it, it's going to be hard across the top 3 or 4 to give them all what they're actually asking for, the top dollar, even though they've all scored exceptionally well, and they all do invaluable work.
Shall we move to talk about the family place? Okay. The request here for $10,000.
I didn't hear from Michelle on that one, did we?
Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle.
I would largely agree with what has been said. I ranked this one pretty highly. I agreed with Penny's suggestion that as a repeat grantee, it would have been useful to see a report on previous years' funding, financial report, how the money was spent, activities, et cetera. Nonetheless, I graded this one pretty highly. The one thing that gives me any pause is this detail that has been threading through our conversation in both this meeting and the last meeting, of sort of the idea of almost core funding grants versus versus kind of one-off special projects in the community. And I wish it's beyond our purview to make this change now, but I wish there were a different mechanism or a different bunch of funds, bucket of funds, to pay for the important work of some of these organizations that really are coming to us to pay for some of their core expenses. Because I thought that what this grant opportunity was to do was to allow the community to sort of allow the municipality to pivot and be very sort of versatile and flexible and do things that come up on sort of a one-off, once needed kind of basis. And if really we're spending most of our resources on the very valuable work of some important institutions, then we actually don't have room to do that pivoting. And so that's not a conversation for this time. So I think this is a strong proposal, but I wish there were a way we could get to that tension moving forward.
Okay, on to Family Place. So again, the application for 10. I had one question. I mean, I thought the application was very strong, and this is an organization that seems to be responding very quickly and effectively to people's needs since the pandemic hit. I just had one question about the ask. It looked to me like they only needed an extra they were only 5,000 short in their expenses for the year. So I wasn't sure about where the $10,000 request came from. Did anyone else notice that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I noticed something slightly different. I didn't actually notice that particular detail, but when I was looking at last year's budget versus this year's budget, it looks like they are requesting 10,000 more in salary than they did last year. And I didn't really see anything in the application that would make sense why they would need 10,000 more to operate this year than last.
They may have more staff, I guess.
Yeah, maybe, but that's the kind of thing that the kind of onus is on them to let us know, unfortunately.
But this is the overall arching piece that you just spoke to a few minutes ago.
Yes.
Since I've been on the committee, a bunch of the applications are the same applications. They're all warranted, but really what they're all asking for is core funding, because we're getting the same groups asking for almost the same amounts of money every single time. So it begs a larger conversation, but that's part of the reason why I think we see some of these elements within the application.
Right.
One of the questions I had about this application, aside from the budget, was that there's a lot of mentioning very broadly about how they were going to move toward virtual programming this year in light of the situation. But I wish that they had actually talked a little bit more about what that might look like. They talk about their ability to support the families and have engagement of the families and interaction and all the things that they do, but they didn't really say what that would look like. And I wish that they had, because I don't have a sense of that at all when working with little kids, how you provide virtual programming for families via technology in a time like this. And that would have made a big difference to me to understand that better.
Who haven't we heard from? Michael?
I find this one a little bit more difficult. Another case of Family Place invaluable service, And I see consistently in the history, we've given $10,000 for the last 2 years for sure, and requested for this. That the problem with changing courses here is this may be a discussion for the rest of this year, because someone raised, I think, the most excellent point that some of these applicants, are they really ones that should be in front of us, or are they ones that council should simply say, yes, they are producing a service, an indispensable service for the community, and they should be paid a fee for service, which means they have continuity, because this is very nerve-wracking for these people who need to make plans, but they have to come in front of a group of individuals every year, and they really don't know until we make up our minds or make the recommendations and have them approved what the answer is going to be. So I'm tempted to say, given the work Family Place do, that their grant should continue, and that people like myself should take it forward in the forthcoming year, rather in the same way as I would plan to for Caring Circle, saying, look, having these good folk coming up in front of us every year is inappropriate. If they are that valuable and they've been endorsed and you've all recommended them over a period of time, we should take them on an ongoing basis. So in this case, I would say with Family Place, my feeling is we should continue it, and it should be subject to council's review over the next 12 months, whether it should continue in front of this committee or be part of an annual fee for service, we agree. So that would be a discussion, but I would hate to see them not being able to rely upon, especially given the amount extra children and the amount of extra they are having to deal with. Their numbers are never decreasing, they're only increasing.
The same would be true for Caring Circle then, I assume.
Yes, that's a thought, because could we be without these two organizations? No, their demands are becoming greater, not lesser, excuse my grammar. And for that reason, to suddenly deny them funds, which they have almost become to rely on, rightly or wrongly, but you know, they only have certain source of funds. I think it's very important that we support these two initiatives.
But speaking to what Andrea brought up at the get-go, you know, and I said, yes, I caught the same thing. There was really just a $5,000 shortfall. What's the other $5,000 going to? I'm just going back to the beginning, just to think about.
I'm just looking for that where I'd marked that. I think it was on the first page of the financials.
Unless we read it wrong, which, you know, in my case is it could be highly likely.
While Andrea is looking for that, I just want to point out, and it might be, you know, from a further later conversation, there is a point in number 3, yes, an indication the applicant is moving towards self-sustainability.
Yes.
And that's a really key point, I think, in our analysis. Like, a lot of these wouldn't get a point for that. And I think that it's important we emphasize that for future grantees, especially if the municipality is going to take on some of these organizations for core funding. Just maybe having a higher weight for that point rather than having it tucked in there.
I think that's a good point. I would totally be behind that. I was just also looking at the budget, and what I see is that they have a $5,000 shortfall after already writing in their hope that they would receive $10,000 from this grant.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it's not
Okay.
that they have a $5,000 need, but they're saying BIM grant $10,000 and they still have a $5,000 shortage.
Wow.
Am I reading that correctly? Do you see that?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yes, that's how I read it.
Hmm. I guess this is one too. If the amount requested relates to staffing costs, there is, maybe this comes back to what you were saying, Michelle. The question is, are the staff working at the same level? I mean, I appreciate people may be on Zoom with moms and dads, and maybe kids are saying hello like they are at other preschools, but are the staff working at the same level or not? I'm not sure what that arrangement is.
Well, I mean, I can speak to some of that because that's, you know, that's in my wheelhouse when I'm doing counseling and working with families and kids. It's probably more intense.
Yeah.
It's there is such a different degree of engagement, and actually any of our primary teachers or you know, the homeschool folks that are having to do almost all of their pieces via Zoom right now, and trying to coordinate that in a way where the learning and the experience can come close to an opportunity of the kids getting what they need to get, whether it's individual sessions, family sessions, whatever that is. There's a great deal of finagling to determine how to do that via Zoom, and making that have weight to that based on that the families are getting the type of counseling and the support that they need to have around strategic planning, dealing with challenging behaviors, learning how to connect and talk, and all kinds of things. So I'm not going to say that would be any less than face-to-face, just because I'm living that life right now, and it is by far much more emotionally exhausting than anything that's face-to-face. That's for sure. There's challenges. There's always going to be challenges because you're doing it virtually, but that means you have to work that much harder to make sure that people are getting the support and the direct learning opportunity that is going to provide a practical skill, a practical piece that solves or looks to solve a problem.
I guess my point was really about whether people were working the same number of hours. I fully appreciate that their work
I don't think that they don't. I don't
is
know
equivalent. Well, I don't know either. Yeah, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
In my world, because it's all about counseling and connecting with families and providing all that type of family support, it's just as many hours, if not more.
Okay. Who have we lost? Are we all here?
Penny.
We've lost Penny.
No, I don't want any more problems with Zoom. I'm done with that.
All right.
What?
Let me see. Is she in the chat?
I found a minute ago when we were talking about the Health Center Foundation, my system just froze for about a minute, and I actually missed a good chunk of that discussion because it was all gone, and I almost left to come back in again to restart it, and then it came back. So it could be she's experienced something like that as well.
Gotta love technology, gotta not so much love it.
Here
It's
she
helping.
is.
There she.
But I have
back,
to say,
Penny.
I love
Almost welcome back, Penny.
Steph's shirt is the same color as my little share the green thing on my thing. On the bottom of the screen where we have participants chat, share screen, record.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Mine is green and it's the same color as your shirt.
this is my Zoom shirt.
Love it.
Did we have her?
We did.
No,
for
we
a
don't.
sec.
We're still down one.
Oh, there she
Eva,
is. She's back in the waiting room. She's coming back.
Should we go ahead and look at the Excel sheet again together?
So there's been just a slight update. There was one particular committee member who was just still waiting just to get their suggestions in. So that's now in. So I'm going to share it. They're almost similar, but very, very. Let me share my screen here.
Yay.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Did I share with you?
Perfect.
That is
Thank
awesome
you.
sauce.
Can we expand it? Or am I just old? I'll just look.
Oh. I just,
That help?
Yeah, thank you. I am old. It's okay. Okay, so what's the shortfall? We need to trim 28.6, folks.
2320.
Oh, sorry, 20.
Oh,
Why am I
sorry,
even bothering today?
Sorry,
Yeah.
another request.
2,320 is what we need to trim if we go with this 2020 working for discussion suggestion.
Yes.
I think that the 2020 working for discussion is a very interesting point to start from. As I understand, it was just an averaging of the initial scores that we gave as we were entering our initial scores before all of the discussion.
Yes.
And so while it is an interesting starting point, I think we probably do need to revisit those.
Yeah,
at this
absolutely, I would
point.
say.
Also going back to the point that we started with, like, this is the time, if we're going to try to prioritize any sort of COVID response, it would come in this stage as well as a nuance.
I feel I did last time, but I feel I need to suggest one more time that, you know, if we're going to focus on some of the higher need organizations and not sort of, I'm not necessarily of the camp that we just, you know, give everyone some. And for me, Light Up Bowen, as much as I love that project, is not, I'm not sure it's a priority this year. If it's taking money from, you know, the health center or the caring circle or BIRCH's efforts, as they're trying to build, you know, a more sustainable COVID resistant community this year, it doesn't seem the year certainly to give them more money than they've received in the past. Yeah, that's my view. I'd be happy to hold off getting new lights. We've got lots of lights, but getting new lights for a year, just like we're going without new in a lot of areas of our lives.
So
Any
I
other-
totally second that. I agree with absolutely everything there. Though how I might differ a little bit is to say that while I don't think that we need new lights at all, I think there may be some value in continuing to support the volunteers with a little bit of a stipend for all of the hours of work that they're doing. And so, you know.
But that's not what was requested.
Well,
There
it
was
was
a
a
shot-
little, it's in the budget. It is in the
Okay.
budget. They requested $10,000 for that, plus, you know, a whole bunch of other stuff. But if we were to give them $2,000 or $1,000 and have that go to just compensating their time a little bit, I think that would be a fair thing to do, because it is a huge time consumption to organize.
I agree with Michelle. I think they had $2,000 allocated between two people for wages, and I think being compensated for that is very fair. But I agree, we don't need to invest in a bigger show. It's they've done an amazing job, and it's a great show, but it does take time.
I just want to be clear. What's the 2004? It's to pay the volunteers or
The organizers.
pay the organizers?
So there are two people who do most of the coordinating and organizing, looking for volunteers and the hanging of the lights and shopping and fundraising.
I know,
and
yeah,
all of
yeah.
that. So it's to pay them.
I just want to, okay. Are there others that people want to comment on? I just want to go back.
I struggle with it, and I don't know that I should necessarily jump in, because we actually put up more lights, and nobody gets paid.
Oh, fair enough.
So
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you know, what we have at the church is over 50,000 lights. Last year we had close to 60, and that's more lights than what the Light Up the Bowen guys have. Not that I'm trying to buckle out for who's got the biggest lights, but everybody that does those lights all donates their time. Now, you know, that said, we don't do the big Santa comes fairies in the streets, all that kind of stuff. I know that this year they're not going to be able to do the same piece. So if it's just about putting up lights, which is probably what they're gonna really only be able to do. I'm sitting in Andrea's camp. I'm kind of like, there's other folks that really need what limited funding we have, and I'm going to go in that direction.
I guess I agree with that. I think that's a good point.
Do we know how many years we've funded Light Up, Bowen?
2 past years. Yeah.
I would really hate to see it not happen.
I don't know that it's not going to happen, because I mean, the bulk of that referral was or the application was all about, you know, they wanted, you know, bigger, more lights, this, that, the next thing. I don't think that there isn't, I mean, for goodness sakes, Noah and I could join in and help them put up lights on the downtown area, right? I mean, the spectacle is what they put together when Santa comes and things like that. And I just don't know how that's going to play out this year. I just don't, given there's, they've been, the health department's been really clear, no major anything beyond, like no festivals, no nothing until next year. So that's Christmas, that's everything out of the mix. If we can light up the Cove, then I would be one of the first ones to step up and say, yes, we will help, we will do the church and we'll come down and help you put lights up over the Cove if you don't have enough bodies to help put the lights up. So
that comes back to this, for me, that comes back to the sustainability issue is, we know that there's 2 people who do tons of legwork, but there hasn't been a growing, there hasn't been a growing number of volunteers and a big community effort to get this up. I worry that that's, it's the same dynamic every year that 2 people are doing most of the work. And is that, I don't know. It's not the case for most other applications. Does anyone know if BowFest organizers are paid?
Well, when I was a part of it, no. The only people that got paid were the different acts. Like the acts that would come through to perform, and then if you were doing, like when I was a part of it, we had the different the climbing wall, the Ferris wheel thingy, like the equipment that would come in, we would pay for that. But everybody else attached to BowFest volunteered.
Okay, so for now, shall we, if everyone's writing along or watching along, is that, so Light Up Bowen would at most be 2,000. Can we agree that so far?
Yeah,
I would just clarify that
I would probably come, like I'm listening.
I would come down.
I would probably come down from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like listening to what has just been said, I am not feeling myself that we must fund Light Up Bowen. I think in terms of priorities and everything else that's just been said, I would be comfortable enough zeroing that one out.
Let's keep moving and see how I feel like we're sort of smoothing stones now, right?
Yeah, could we put that in at $2,000 and see where it takes us? And perhaps possibly be open to reducing it.
So Bowen in transition, should we go back there?
Why don't I leave it in white so that we know that we might come back to it?
Yep.
Okay. Bowen in transition. This is the updating of the COVID information or the green guide. We collectively, I think I'm right that the 975 was just people's preliminary thoughts before the discussion. So I don't know that 975 helps us all that much to get started.
I think it's 1280.
It's 1280.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking. so many pieces of paper, 1280.
I guess the question for me is if they didn't get the 2.5 and they only got partial of the 2.5, would the updated guidebook actually be made? Like, do they need the full 2.5 to have that actually happen? If it can't happen without the 2.5, then I don't know what would be helpful if we're giving whatever we give, if it's not going to be able to actually create the product that they want to create or are hoping to create.
Yeah, unfortunately, the application wasn't detailed enough to really see what the flow of money would be like. And so it seems like the majority of the amount that they requested was for salaries or to cover the costs of the people who would be doing some of the research and writing, as far as I could tell anyway. And it wasn't clear whether they were hoping to farm that out to other people and pay them to do it, or whether this was going to be an effort mostly by the folks within the organization.
There are 9 volunteers listed.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone used this guide or seen it before?
Yeah, I've seen it.
I've seen it.
I use it at the farm down here.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I'm like woo-wooing. I'm just saying I've seen it and I know that people.
Okay, good, because I've never seen it. Yeah. I guess what I'd love to understand is what it does that's different from the information that's out there.
Well, it's all in one source point for them, right? So they're not having to track down or spend that kind of time trying to get to information when they've got it in one particular handbook. And it is mostly all green focused so for folks that are really quite committed to that, and in some sense we should all be more in that vein. It's valuable in that way, I would believe.
Okay, and it'll be online, right? That was the application, as opposed to a book.
I believe so.
They talk about making a version of it available for people who may not be connected online, but they don't say very much like what that would look like.
Or where you would get it.
Where you would get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a tough one. I sort of appreciated the effort of their application. I think ultimately it would be sort of a useful thing. It's always hard to chase down information, and being able to find more centralized places is where you can find it is useful. But in the spirit of what we've been saying,
It'd be useful, not critical at this moment.
Issue for this year.
Well, and part of it for me is that, they could do a little Bowen Island drive-through dinner at the Legion and probably raise the $2,500 just by doing that. I'm just saying.
Yep.
I'm not-
Nice to have, but not needs to have. When I look at the rest of the audience here, by that I mean the proposals.
I'm going to be the, are you finished, Mike? Sorry. I'm going to be the dissenting voice in that I think that this was responsive to, COVID. It is about updating it. It is about incorporating information on food sustainability by working with the Bowen Island Food Sovereignty Group. So it's about partnerships. And it's about making it more accessible by making it online. So I actually think that, and it's project-based. So this isn't core funding. This is really very much in line with what we ask people to come with, meets a lot of the criteria. And I support it totally. So
Do you support it at the full amount?
I support it at the full amount. So I don't know that where that leaves us, but obviously not at the full amount. But
Well, we could put it in white and come back.
Yeah, sure.
You know, it's the piece of, I mean, again, the only piece that I struggle with is if we're not, I'm in Michelle's camp. If we're not giving them the full amount, can they do what it is that they're asking to be able to do?
Well, they could leverage a grant from us
Right.
for other grants, obviously. But yeah, and I guess the issue that we're facing, which I can see both sides of, is this something that's valuable for us as a community now? I mean, the COVID piece kind of adds a now to this year, an urgency.
Well,
And I see both sides.
Food security across the board is, you know, whether it's COVID or not, is an issue for many Bowen residents that are struggling. That almost all, I don't know that there's very many people on the island that make a living wage. So when
No,
we
but
talk about that,
I think we can all agree on that, Yvonne. The question is this resource going to promote, you know, is it, how will it be used, actively used to promote food security? Is what I'm genuinely interested in. I love all their projects, but I'd love to get over that line if somebody can help me.
Well, I think that's what the guide is about pooling resources and connecting with other groups to provide that information, make that information accessible. Yeah. And I think to the point of the full amount, yeah, maybe they will have to do another fundraiser to make up the difference, or finding funding somewhere else.
I'm also looking for the partnership section, because there's so many organizations.
They include it under the project description.
Okay, thank you. Right. Okay. Well, shall we just put half in white for now? I don't know. I'm open.
I can't remember have they received funds from the community grants before? I don't think so, right?
I don't recall.
No.
Not at my time, I don't think.
No.
Because I mean, this is certainly one I'd be interested in a report at the end of the day.
I think they did for their original green guide, maybe. I feel like I read that somewhere, but that was years ago, so it wouldn't be something that would have come up from last year or the year before.
I wish I had a greater sense of the green guide being more of a go-to resource for people, but I don't know. Okay, let's move on. So we've put half of the amount there, and Island Pacific School. Okay. I forget, did we talk amounts on Friday, everybody?
Yeah.
So, and I emailed you the notes. Do you want me to review what was in the notes?
I'm sorry, I don't have my other, yeah.
Okay, I'll go to another screen.
And I remember us separating out the financial aid from the equipment, and the financial aid was what, Steph?
So I'm sorry, I'm just clicking those open and okay. So it was for 10,000, and then it was suggested that the one financial aid and the support for Bowen families be separated, and that the support for Bowen families would be the one. Sorry, the
Financial aid for Bowen families.
yeah, that be the one that's supported, not the preparing the school. The positive comments were well-written, specific application, impacts of COVID, priority were highlighted. Some felt alternative education opportunities were important during this time of smaller groups. Concerns included benefits did not benefit the community as a whole, but rather a small group, many of whom were off island. As an independent school, is there actually a financial need? Community impact less than other applicants, and are they reaching their donor and no, positive thing is reaching their donor and alumni base. Yeah.
I'm looking at, I guess it's number 5 in the application that shows an increased financial need requested due to COVID-19 of $13,000. So if we're assuming that financial aid is the focus of any grant, it would be contributing to that 13,000 in some way. Do we want to go with the sort of the 3 that was randomly came up in our preliminary discussion, or I can't be involved in this one, so.
I think it might be good to get a number down now and then do all of them numbers wise and then maybe review back so we don't run out of time.
Yeah, I understand giving something, and I think for me, when I was considering this, I was looking at, I know there's a huge impact, a huge cost if you're going to open up based on what the public health is requiring schools and businesses to do. I mean, we're seeing that right now. If you go to the general store and you buy something, there's a new little tax on the bottom that you have to pay. It's like the LPST tax. I'm like, what is this? And it's a local service tax because these guys are having to spend copious amounts of money on cleaning supplies to keep everything cleaned and sanitized and the whole 9 yards. This to me is would be the same for all of our academic places, institutions. So I would be more inclined to support that because that is an increased cost that they would have never thought to budget in terms of how much more they have to do to be able to actually operate a program, whatever that program is going to look like.
I think, Yvonne, the reason we talked about focusing more on financial aid was that the financial aid would be directed to Bowen families as opposed to a mix of families. But in any event, can somebody other than me just suggest a number to put down in white for now?
Well, there is a number there, 29.
No, that's not, that's a number that was a result of our preliminaries. Would somebody like to recommend something close to that? Michelle?
Let's say 3.
Okay.
3.
Great. Okay, so let's go to BIRCH. Let's go back to BIRCH, the ask of 75.
So on this one, I get going back to Michael's comments at the beginning, if there's a pretty solid chance that the municipality is going to be able to fund BIRCH out of a different pocket, it would sure make our lives easier if we didn't have to pencil in a number here.
That was my feeling, because I look at the size of numbers you're getting down to now. It does get to a point where it could be so small if it's scattered too much as not to have any real meaning. So that's why I took 1 or 2 out to make the other ones more meaningful.
So is the question whether we look at awarding a certain amount or simply refer this application in essence off to council as we did last year?
I recommend we refer it to council, if that's an option.
I don't think, in view of discussions held, council would have a problem with that.
Okay.
I'm speaking for others now, which is probably not entirely proper, but that's my opinion.
Okay, So I'm going to be, are we going to put in a yellow or a white 0 for now? Because of that.
Mhm.
Okay. Health Center Foundation. It's a very strong application. I'd certainly be in favor of awarding the 15 requested, just as a starting point. We can trim it. Does anyone want to suggest something else?
I'll just agree with that.
I agree with that.
Okay, let's check in the 15 there. We have a trickier one though, which is Family Place.
I would go on record as suggesting the 10 for Family Place, even just based upon their growing numbers, the work that they do, and the pressure that I know that they're under.
And they're, you know, the suggestion that they're being responsive to families in their homes. Okay, let's put 10 there.
Okay, now we're going back up again.
Gonna have to.
So this last one, if we were to keep all the white figures, this last one would be 10,000. If we were to be in balance.
Let's not take
Caring
any.
Circle.
I would advocate not taking away from Caring
Caring
Circle.
Circle.
Yeah, I would
Let's
even.
Let's put 15. Can I now? Steph has just sent us the recommendation from last year regarding BIRCH. The CGAC does not believe that the scope and complexity of the BIRCH grant application is within its mandate. And because it doesn't understand the complexity of the relationship between BIRCH and the Muni, be it resolved that the Community Grants Advisory Committee refers the BIRCH community grant application to council. And as I understand it, those monies were found. Is that right?
Yeah.
Michael, can you confirm that?
I just read that out again, because I don't know whether I can confirm it's found.
I believe it was, but I would need Michael to confirm. I'm trying to think where I'm going to find that information.
My question though is, I think last year's application was not as directed as this one is. It was a getting started grant. It was a seed grant and request that was really genuinely hard to pick through and understand. And I'm not sure that this is the same, but okay. So Michael, whereas the grants committee doesn't believe that the scope and complexity of the BIRCH grant application is within the CGAC mandate, whereas the committee doesn't understand the complexity of the relationship between BIRCH and the Muni, therefore, be it resolved that the committee refers the BIRCH community grant application to council.
Yes, and then it can deal with that application as part of its consideration for BIRCH.
Okay.
So I think that in this case, we would probably want to change language just a little bit, because as was just being noted, that it's not the scope and complexity really that's the problem this year. I mean, it's a pretty targeted application at $7,500 for operating costs. But maybe that funding operating costs for BIRCH is not, we don't view as within the mandate. I mean, we'd just have to change that language a little bit if we're going to move that forward.
How is that different though from Caring Circle or Family Place?
This is a slippery slope.
Yeah, I think it's largely the same, but in this case, Michael has suggested that the municipality may possibly be able to support BIRCH through a different pocket. And so we're sort of trusting that that's a possibility. Whereas the other ones may be able to switch over at some point, but there isn't that possibility this year.
And if we're wrong?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I mean, there's a lot of room for being wrong in this. I mean, there's,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're gonna have to cut some people somewhere, and every one of these applications has its advocates. And they can't all be funded in full, so.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, on what basis would we be referring BIRCH this year versus other sort of operational funding applications? I'm not sure. I'd love to send one to the Muni, to council to consider.
Well, council can consider, I think, to be honest, council is going to look to you to make your recommendations. I don't think one could possibly second guess what council as a group are going to do, because council has the right to take your recommendations, and if it comes to a different decision, well, it could do that as well. So I'm sorry, I think second guessing what council may or may not do, I think it's a possibility, and I have no problem telling you that that could exist, but you're going to have to make your recommendations, which I will take forward as a group, and then the council might say, well, this is going to happen, so therefore we're going to make different, or redistribute as because of a decision we've taken. But I don't think this group can second guess what council might or might not do. I think they're going to have to make their recommendations independently, knowing that there is an opportunity. Council has worked with BIRCH from the beginning, and I think it's probably best standing on its record from day one.
Shall we proceed then from the assumption that the BIRCH application gets referred to council on the same basis, that they have this ongoing relationship, that we think they're in a better position to approve this particular application and this project? So leave it at 0, and then work with the number that we have, although carrying circle needs to be in white or my toenails are going to curl.
I thought that
What do
was
you
one
think?
that everyone was, that there was, you'd reached consensus on, sorry.
Oh, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Maybe not, no, sorry.
Yeah, and I don't know if we reached consensus. It was at 1250 before.
Okay.
And I mentioned, I didn't think we should take away from it, but I meant we shouldn't take away from the 1250.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm struggling with the top 3 getting their full amounts, but I'll wait.
Okay, so we've got a shortfall of 4850.
And I think on that point, well, I don't know what Yvonne's point is, but not all 3 of them, the top 2 fall into that core funding where we're asking people to find long-term sustainability, so they're not relying on the community grants. So they may need a nudge, because I don't necessarily want to take the funds away from one-off applicants who are also have worthy elements in what they bring to the community, to continually fund the ongoing operational costs. Even though I think that both of those organizations are doing vital work. I don't know how best to manage this, because I wouldn't want them to not succeed.
Well, if we looked at things like, and made some sort of determination on, Light Up Bowen, and said, do we give them or do we not, based on what they will or will not do? And if we're using that money to pay volunteers.
Where are we on this? If we were to
You're 48.5 short out.
yeah, so no, I'm sorry, I meant on Light Up Bowen. If we were to look at not funding Light Up Bowen this year, whereas who would be in favor of that?
Pardon me?
I would, giving them, not funding them this year. That's 3,
I think I was the last holdout, and I would concede to the group.
No, I would continue to hold out. I frankly, if I look at the community benefit at Christmas, I would actually take from the Island Pacific School, which I think is a private organization and doesn't have such broad community involvement. I would take that 3 out. I would leave the 2 in Bowen transition, and I would actually trim the Health Center Foundation a little bit. I think the Health Center Foundation would be very grateful for a check in excess of 10,000. So I would look for my 4,008 from a trimming of the Health Center Foundation and taking from Island Pacific School.
Michael, on what basis do you say that about the health center? Because they've asked for 15.
Is in a position of raising cash at the moment, and you know, a gift from you all of 10,000 is still a generous gift. And I look at the small amount for Bowen, for Light Up Bowen, and that's a small amount, and I would not like to lose that small amount, and I just think if you were to issue a check to the Health Center Foundation in excess of 10, that would be a considerable donation. I really do. And
shall we put 10 into the health center for a minute?
Yeah.
Yeah, then we're almost there.
Well, then I think you are in a good position. You know, I'm supporting myself personally. The Health Center Foundation, I'm totally in favor of it. I think they have many good people helping them, and I'm thrilled that that's the case. But I think that just, you know, give a little bit for those good folk who are going to maintain the light up, and if you're going to leave the 3,000 in the school because you feel that's right, then I'll happily pass that wish forward.
Would anyone else like to comment on if we stay in this space, where would you chuck the $150?
Yeah.
And B, whether you want to play with the bottom numbers at all, whether you want to consider Michael's comments about Island Pacific.
I understand what Michael's saying about Light Up Bowen, but again, I come from a place that we put up more lights and nobody gets paid for it. So I disagree. I completely disagree. If you want this to happen, people will come out, people will help to make it happen. I don't believe that we have to pay people to do that, not this year. And I'm not, but I want to see Island Pacific. It's a valued resource on the island. And yes, I know that there are some off-island youth that participate in that program, but there's also a chunk of on-island youth that are served by that. So,
well, again, Yvonne, I think, Yvonne, what we were agreeing was whatever IPS got would be for financial support for Bowen kids. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So I would probably, I know that he's taking some money from the foundation piece. I'd probably like to see that get as close to 15 as possible. And then if we had whatever we had left over, give the Bowen and transition people another 150, because that, you know, what Michelle spoke to is that these are all supposed to be project-based applications, and everything that's getting the bulk of money is really all about staffing and core funding. And then it becomes, well, why are we here? Like,
yes, although I hear you, and yet that's something that will have to get dealt with this year. We can't deal with it here. Yeah.
No, I'm not asking to deal with it, but I'm just putting out my rationale based on where I would like, where I think money would best be suited.
Okay. Well, why don't we chuck the 150 for now into Bowen in transition, because that wasn't fully funded. what did I do?
No, I
Oh,
just-
no, so it should be,
Sorry, my fault.
yeah. So if I'm right, the two question marks for people remain Island Pacific and Light Up Bowen, and whether any of those funds allocated should actually go to the foundation. I think I have that right. So should we take a show of hands around Light Up Bowen? Should Light Up Bowen be reallocated to the foundation? Does anyone have a view? Or sorry, should they? Yes, put up your hand if you think they should be reallocated to the foundation.
So the money for Light Up Bowen to go to the foundation. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're putting forth as a motion?
Yes, I think so, yeah. Yes.
Okay. Are you asking for a show of hands or what are you asking?
I'm asking for a show of hands. Thanks, Yvonne.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to be clear. Right, because I can't see everybody.
Light Up Bowen funds to the Health Center Foundation. Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't see Michael. Okay. Okay, so let's move that money temporarily. See what and then the other debate is about Island Pacific School, which I cannot participate in. Does somebody want to make a motion about that?
What motion? What are we looking
You know,
to-
I'm trying to be all Robertsy. Does somebody want to ask for the group's views about those funds?
I'll do it. I'll do it.
And I think it's a yes or no. It's not a how much. Yeah.
I think the question on the table is, do we have $3,000 in the IPS line here? Do we want to leave it there, or do we want to reallocate it to the Bowen Island Health Center Foundation to make their full $15,000 request? So does anybody want to support moving $3,000 from IPS to the Health Center Foundation?
If it's an either or, that the 3,000 stays at Pacific Island or goes to the foundation, I have to say I would have to vote to move it to the foundation.
I can't contribute.
I guess I would prefer to see it stay with IPS. It's a smaller, significantly smaller amount than they've requested, but maybe it's enough to make a little bit of a difference to offset some of the extraordinary changes and costs that they're going to have this year. And I think that could really make a difference to some island families.
I would like it to stay with Island Pacific.
Penny?
I'm going to say stay with Island Pacific as well.
Oh, you guys. That doesn't get us anywhere, does it?
Well, I don't think we need to get anywhere. I think.
Well, we've got the number.
No, it was the majority, wasn't it?
Yeah,
No,
it was.
Two and two.
No.
Consensus here. I'm not sure what the goal is.
It was 3 to move the funds and 1 to not move the funds. And
Did I miss somebody? I don't have a view on this. I can't have a view on this.
No, I know. Michelle, Yvonne, myself said keep it where it is. Sorry, and Michael said move it to the health center.
I'm so sorry, you guys. I need another coffee. So we're done. Are we done?
It's done to me. 4:30, you got to make a vote.
Okay.
Yes, well done. That you balanced the books.
Okay.
So then what do we need to do formally to be
Oh,
official?
I've got a recommendation that the Community Grants Advisory Committee recommend to council that the amount specified be allotted to the following. And I list all of the names of the groups and the amounts. The screen share is edit. I'll just take it off that spreadsheet.
And then we need to deal with the recommendation about BIRCH as well.
And then we do the BIRCH recommendation after, yeah. Okay, Aoife, do you want to read them out, please?
Clearing Circle Health and Wellness Society of Bowen Island, a recommendation of $15,000. Bowen Island Family Place, recommendation of $10,000. Bowen Island Health Centre Foundation, a recommendation of $12,000. Bowen in Transition, a recommendation of $1,400. Island Pacific School, a recommendation of $3,000. For a total of $41,400.
I'll move that.
I'll move it first.
Seconder.
Time's important.
You do seconding. Yeah,
Oh,
Yvonne.
say something. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
All in favor?
Mhm.
All in favor? Yvonne?
Yeah.
Michael?
Yes, because I'm glad there's consensus amongst the group, and it's that consensus I'll be taking forward. Please remember that I can chime in, but in a way, I probably am reluctant to, because I want to take the group's feeling forward into council as much as, and my own is my own, but I want to take the group. It's you as a group that I need to take forward. That's really my responsibility. And thank you.
We need
Thanks,
that.
Mike.
Mhm. Recommendation regarding BIRCH.
Right, so how about the Community Grants Foundation believes that, aren't we really saying that we believe that the BIRCH application should again be referred to council? And then say why?
Or maybe just say, recommend that council fund BIRCH operations from a different fund.
Yeah, or yes, referred, just, I think actually if you say referred to council, I think I'm quite capable of taking the spirit of the intent if you're happy with me. You wish, your feeling is that BIRCH has worked with council and that you wish then that you haven't included them and you wish it removed or put taken forward to council.
So I have that the Community Grants Advisory Committee recommend that council fund BIRCH from a source other than the community grants budget.
Yeah, that's a step further. We're giving thumbs up to the merits of the application.
Right, and
It's
then if
just
that's your wish, that's good.
Yeah.
We can put that on as Steph has said it, and then we'll take it forward with that recommendation, because there is the wish of this group put forward as a recommendation, if that's acceptable to you all.
So do you want to say whereas beforehand, whereas CGAC supports the work that BIRCH does? Or just the one recommendation?
Mm-mm. I mean, I'm wondering, I think it would be nice to comment on, is it our place to comment on the merits of the application?
Definitely.
I'd love to say that we loved it,
Okay.
if we loved it.
We use the word love. What's the word?
Penny? Well, I would, of course. but-
Fancy word for
Penny?
love. Penny. What do you got?
We're impressed.
Merit.
We
Yes.
feel passionately.
Strongly supported.
We're ecstatic.
Strongly,
We're, yeah.
strong. Can I say strongly supports?
I
Yeah.
think strongly support will be well understood by the group. If you,
Thanks,
you say
Michael.
you strongly support it, I think that's good English. I think it's clearly understood.
Thank you.
And then just say, don't even bother going into what the reasons, I guess, because you're going in the piece around operational funding.
I would suggest less words of it.
And the help.
Less is more. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I think BIRCH's application relates to what's properly the work of council or something, whatever
Or
Michael
just
said
whereas
before.
the committee strongly supports the BIRCH application, therefore they ask the council funded from another source. Sorry.
No,
However-
what Andrea just said was perfect.
Say it again.
Can't we just say we strongly support the application,
Mhm.
Love you.
but could we even say, but as was the case in 2009, we refer the application to council because of its close relationship with the work of BIRCH.
Mhm. Whereas in 2019, CGAC referred the BIRCH application to council, which was funded by council, to council. Therefore, be it resolved that the committee recommend the council fund BIRCH from a source other than the community grants budget.
What do you think, Michael? You're the salesman for this thing. Well, he's going to sell it for us.
I'm going to opt for the simpler move that you found great merit in the BIRCH application and support the BIRCH application, and you are forwarding that recommendation for support to council.
Got it?
You're looking for council to support it. You found great merit in their application, and you're looking to them to support it.
Here's the bill, council.
Yeah,
Over to you.
Believe it or
Yeah.
I
not.
feel like that's what it says.
Yeah.
It just
Yes,
won't come.
Service charge included.
thanks. All right. So then we need to move that? Go, Yvonne, move it.
I move.
And as a council, I'll second it as well.
Thank you, Michael. And I believe, am I right that our work here is done?
Yes.
Everybody, I want to
Well done,
Thank-
everyone.
thank
Yes.
you for your time. And thank you for your
guys for your
patience
time.
with a deeply inexperienced and frazzled chair. And I think that's it.
Thank you, guys.
So what do we need to do to close this shop? What does Robert say about that?
Little kisses.
You asked for motion to adjourn.
No, you don't need a
I'd
motion
like-
to adjourn. You just
Oh, you
end
don't?
it.
Or
Well,
you
I
could
adjourn it anyway.
You can all
Adjourn.
just turn off the screen.
We'll
I'm gonna
all
hang
just
up now.
flee.
Bye-bye, thank you.